Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who ruled and teach well. In peace and salutations to you, sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. Behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him. And this is talking about Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, as he's known today, as it says in Psalms 58, verse 3, the wicked, the border of wickedness, as pursuant to Malachi 1, verse 4, the wicked whom the earth has been given into the hands of, in Job chapter 9, verse 24, the wicked is estranged from the womb. They go forth speaking lies as soon as they be born. You Edomites are wicked from the womb. The Most High created you to be the sons of the wicked, to do everything clean contrary to the laws, statutes, and commandments in the scriptures. Hence, why this planet, under your rulership right now, is in complete disarray. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. The just being you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who are the true children of Israel, the sons of righteousness, the sons of God. But right now the Most High is only dealing with his elect. Verse 5, yeah, also because he transgresseth by wine. And that isn't talking about a bottle of Merlot. That's talking about these different philosophies that Esau Edom uses to get the world drunk and off kilter, pushing democracy, capitalism, feminism, even socialism and communism. And lest we forget the Alphabet Coalition, beginning with LG. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. And what are these Edomites known for doing? Going to lands that don't belong to them and what? Setting up shop, making the native population second-class citizens, trying to eradicate them. Just look at the so-called Native Americans in the Americas, and then, raping that nation, that land of its resources. Hey, that era after the Renaissance wasn't called colonization for no reason. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell and is as death and cannot be satisfied. And even though these Edomites are currently in control of the planet right now, that's not enough. Their elites, such as the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, want more. They want everybody's, daily lives, purchases, even their thoughts tracked and traced on this digital grid they're trying to set up. That great RESET, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, where they want C-hip implants in everybody. They want smart meters, smart cars, smart stoves. What did Klaus Tissue Schwab famously say? You will own nothing and be happy. Who enlargeth his desire as hell and is as death and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations and heapeth unto him all people. What does that sound like? A one world government, one world religion, one world currency, that NW0, which when you look at the WEF, who are the faces behind it? When you hear about talks of an NW0, who are the faces behind it? So-called white, really red Edomite faces. Verse 6, shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long? And you're seeing these different nations start to condemn these Edomites, especially in the so-called Western world, saying, look, for decades, for generations, you've come into our lands and made our native people second-class citizens, while you reap the benefits of taking the resources. Hence why you got a lot of these nations looking east to what? The BRICS nations, trying to get out from under the IMF and the dollar as the world reserve currency. Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. And let's go to the definition for that word clay. It's H571 in the Strong's, aptite. And in the outline of biblical usage, it says weight of pledges, heavy debts. And what is the United States of America, the power center for Esau Edom right now, known as a debtor nation? Damn near everybody's in debt. Student loan debt, housing debt, credit card debt. The list goes on. And not just that, the U.S., through treasury bonds, sells its debts to other nations with the guarantee that those treasury bonds will build interest, and these other nations can reap the benefits from it. But right now, as the U.S. is national debt has increased to, I think it's around 34 trillion right now, these other nations are starting to fear that the U.S. is going to default on these debts, and they're going to be put in a completely bad position, which is why they'll be saying what? Woe shall not these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his, and to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. And I opened up the video with these verses to preface a clip from First Post's YouTube channel titled How U.S.'s Staggering $34 trillion debt, that thick clay, can trigger a global rebellion. These different nations taking up that taunting proverb, saying to him, woe unto thee, how long shalt thou increase it thyself that which is not, that doesn't belong to thee, and ladeth thyself with thick clay. And I'm gonna play the majority of this clip. But before I get into it, this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
What is the world's biggest concern right now? Conflicts, arguably. The wars in Ukraine and West Asia, they're causing a lot of instability. But what if I told you that far from these conflict zones, there's a new crisis emerging? A $34 trillion debt bomb growing bigger by the day and causing global anxiety. This debt bomb belongs to the United States of America, the richest country in the world, also the biggest debt holder in the world. And when it explodes, this bomb will cause global devastation. The warning comes from the boss of America's biggest bank. His name is Jamie Dimon. He's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. He says U.S. debt endangers global security. And this debt is humongous. As of today, U.S. borrowing stands at 120% of its GDP. By 2035, this number is set to hit 130%, 130% of America's GDP. That is the level of their debt. And this high level of debt is quite dangerous. Let me quote from what Dimon has said. If you look at that 100% debt to GDP by 2035, I think it's going to be 130%, and it's a hockey stick. That hockey stick does not start yet, but when it starts, markets around the world, there will be a rebellion. What is this hockey stick he's talking about? It's a scenario where high borrowing leads to higher costs, charges to service this debt. And how does it pose a global threat? Again, let me quote. This is about the security of the world. We need a stronger military. We need a stronger America. We need it now. So I put this as a risky thing for all of us. This is risky both for America and its allies and the rest of the world. Many of these allies have bought debt issued by the US government. I'm talking about government bonds. And their exposure is quite high, around $7.6 trillion. That's how much countries around the world have spent. They have bought this debt, $7.6 trillion. And the most vulnerable among them are American allies. I have a list, and topping this list is Japan. Japan owns over $1 trillion of US government debt. The United Kingdom around $716 billion, Luxembourg $371 billion, and Canada $321 billion.
And hey, this is just another, issue amongst a whole host of other issues why America's allies are eventually going to turn against her. Let's go to the book of Obadiah, chapter 1. I'm going to start at verse 1. And the header reads, Edom will be humbled. And this entire chapter is dedicated to you biblical Edomites. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Because eventually, not only are America's enemies, but America's own allies, at some point during World War III, are going to turn against her, and they're all going to attack her, and together shoot 200 million nuclear missiles onto the United States of America. Verse 2, Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. Like I said earlier, a lot of these nations see how, the so-called Western world being led by the U.S. just constantly undercuts and screws over her allies. So they're moving towards the East with the BRICS nations. And then also, America's closest allies with this debt crisis looming and, a bunch of other issues. Hey, they're starting to despise the United States of America. Now I'm going to jump down to verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy, your allies, have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. And I just recently did a video going into how former President Donald Trump says that if America were ever attacked, he believes that NATO won't help them. And eventually NATO will completely turn against the U.S. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread receive all that money to keep NATO and their economies up. They receiving weapons and other logistics, have laid a wound under thee, eventually turning against the U.S. and allying with nations like Russia and China. And there is none understanding in him. And like Big Worm said in Friday, playing with my money is like playing with my emotions. Hey, America's running this casino with these other nations as livelihoods. And when they go bust, hey, they're going to look to be busting somebody's head open. And whose head do you think they're going to be coming after? But I'm going to go back to that word clay in the Strong's, which I'm going to get the Strong's info for it. Something pledged, i.e. collectively pawned goods, such as pledging those U.S. Treasury bonds, pledging that U.S. debt, telling its allies that, look, hey, we got you. Just keep buying up that debt, and when it comes time to reap the benefits, you won't have to worry about it. But as we're seeing, the U.S.'s national debt is increasing day by day. And, its debt to GDP ratio is getting out of hand.
And why have so many countries invested in U.S. government debt? Because they thought it's a solid investment. As Joe Biden himself says, we are able to borrow because we always pay our debt. But is that really a guarantee? What happens when the loans keep piling up and the U.S. is unable to catch up? What happens if the United States defaults? All of these countries will lose money, their economies will be exposed. Some of them are military allies of the US. Canada and the UK, for instance, they're members of NATO. Japan is central to US defense strategy in the East. A default by America will leave all of them weaker, and this is the risk that the JP Morgan chief is referring to. The other big risk, of course, is to the US itself. Such high levels of debt will hurt American defenses. Untamed debt could lead to a budget squeeze. The United States is the world's biggest defense spender. In 2022, it spent over $800 billion on defense. In contrast, the national debt surpassed 100% of the country's GDP, which brings us to the obvious question: how did the US end up with so much debt in the first place? Ironically, one key reason is America's many conflicts. The post-9/11 wars. The United States has spent or sanctioned around $8 trillion on its wars, meaning they've spent $8 trillion on wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and on strengthening America's global security presence.
Hey, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell and cannot be satisfied. Wars in Afghanistan, wars in Iraq, in Syria, fomenting the Libyan civil war, fomenting a war against Iran, that whole China, Taiwan instance, the war in Ukraine. And that's just these modern conflicts Esau Edom is involved in. Look at the history of these Edomites, especially the United States of America. I think, now don't quote me on this, I think out of the 200 and something years of the U.S.'s existence as a nation, there was only about 17 years of peace.
These wars were financed almost entirely through debt. Since 2001, these loans have ballooned and the interest keeps piling up. I have some estimates from 2020. Experts say the US borrowed some $2 trillion for its global war on terror. By 2030, interest on these loans would spike to $2 trillion. So the US will have to pay $2 trillion in principal and another $2 trillion in interest. So $4 trillion in all. And what happens if this interest keeps piling on, if they don't pay? By 2050, the interest payment alone would be worth some $6.5 trillion. So
woe to him that ladeth himself with thick clay. With the way things are looking, and Abaratazah, this is the case, America ain't gonna see 2050. Hell, may not even see 2030.
Are burning a hole in the taxpayer's pocket. And yet they haven't tightened their belt. This debt is now the biggest vulnerability of the US, not an external enemy, but its own growing pile of debt. And it should worry the world.
Hey, Rome is burning, as the saying goes. But that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. As we can clearly see, we are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah.